Welcome back, all of my future occupational therapists. We are doing another video, and today we are going to talk about wheelchairs with emphasis on power wheelchairs. So let's get started. I am going to answer the most commonly asked questions that I get about wheelchairs, and then I am going to help you apply the information to the type of questions or deficits that may be mentioned in the question. So let's get right to it. So the first question that I get is, what is the difference between a power wheelchair and a manual wheelchair, or how do I know when to recommend either or when I'm looking at a question? Easy peasy. So if your client presents with good upper body strength and coordination and good endurance, then they should be able to propel a manual wheelchair. If your client presents with poor upper extremity use, that could be severe weakness, that could be severe coordination issues, or if they have poor endurance, then we may need to recommend them a power wheelchair. The second question is, what is the difference between a tilt in space and a recline chair? So, when we're sitting in a chair, we are sitting at a 90-degree angle, typically, unless you're like me and you're always slouching. I promise I'm working on that. So we're typically sitting at a 90-degree angle, okay? Our hips and our pelvis, they are at a 90-degree angle. A recline chair is going to send the client backwards. It's going to recline, which is opening up the hip angle, okay? So I am going to recommend a recline chair for questions that say the client should not break hip precautions, flexion precautions, then I want to give them a recline chair that's going to promote extension, okay? Or maybe if our client presents with poor postural control, difficulty maintaining upright position, maybe I'm going to recline them slightly so that gravity can help them out when sitting upright. The other chair is a tilt in space, so same concept. We all sit at a 90-degree angle. Our hips and our pelvis are at a 90-degree angle. And just a side note, remember whenever you're positioning a client, no matter if it's in sitting or standing, you always start at the pelvis. So our client is sitting at a 90-degree angle, and a tilt in space chair is going to rotate on an axis. The entire chair is going to tilt back. So guess what? We're maintaining our client's hip position. So if my client presents with extensor tone, and we know that with extensor tone we need to promote flexion of the hips, then I need to keep my client in a flexed position. So I need to give them a tilt in space that's going to keep them in the flexed position when the chair tilts back, versus giving them a reclining chair, because that's going to promote extension, and that is no good for extensor tone. The next question is, oh, good one. How do you know if the client should have their center of gravity anterior to the drive wheel or posterior to the drive wheel, or if you should move the drive wheel anterior or posterior? Great question. So when working with the drive wheel, and just in general, when you see drive wheel, it really determines the maneuverability of a chair, the stability of a chair, and the performance of a chair. So if it can go uphill or downhill, the speed, and so forth. So the drive wheel is the big wheel, okay, that most of your chairs have, the larger wheel, okay, the drive wheel. So the drive wheel and your client's center of gravity are pretty balanced, okay, in a standard chair. If you move the client's center of gravity, or if you move the drive wheel, like I said, it determines the maneuverability and the stability of the chair. So we have our big drive wheel, and remember that our clients, you know what, let's just draw a little wheelchair. I think that's going to make it a lot easier for us, okay? So let's see if I have paper nearby. I should probably edit this. Okay. So, oh, my drawing skills are not good. All right, so big drive wheel, small little casters. Oh, this is so bad, I promise. Okay. So we have a wheelchair, right? And again, we have the big drive wheel and we have our small casters. And your client's center of gravity, right, when they're sitting in a chair, they're right here chilling, relaxing in their chair, okay? So if I move this drive wheel anterior, okay, that means that the client's weight will go to the back of the wheelchair. So let's see what that looks like, okay? And it's not like a dramatic difference. So don't think like, it's a huge difference when you're moving. It's literally a matter of a few inches, okay? But I'll see how we can make it. There we go. There's our client. So we've moved the drive wheel closer to the casters, okay? But the client's center of gravity has moved posterior to the drive wheel. So you can say it in two different ways. I can say move the drive wheel or the axis anterior or forward, or I could say move my client's center of gravity posterior or backward. It means the same thing. What happens when we do this? So now that all of the weight is closer to the back of the chair is going to be more maneuverable because it is tippier. So the weight is not on the little casters up here because the casters determine how you swivel in your wheelchair, right? When you zip around in a wheelchair, the casters help with that. So if I take the weight off of the casters, put majority of the weight behind the drive wheel or posterior to the chair, now I can pop a wheelie, I can go up curbs, right? And I can zip around. So my chair is very maneuverable, but it is tippier. So there's an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is that my client can now maneuver, play sports, go up curbs, all of that kind of stuff. The disadvantage is that now the chair is tippier, which makes it a little unsafe. So we have to be cautious of putting extra weight, like a backpack, on the back of the chair and maybe use like anti-tippers. We also have to make sure that we educate our client on how to move in that chair because it is so tippy and we do not want them to fall, okay? So that is when we move the client's center of gravity backwards or if we move the drive wheel anterior. But let's talk about the other way. And again, I'm making the drawings or the illustrations a little more dramatic just for teaching purposes. Okay, now where is the client's center of gravity? Where is their weight? Their weight is no longer in the back of the wheelchair, okay, or posterior to the axis. Now the weight is closer to the casters. So what have we done? We've moved the client's center of gravity anterior of the drive wheels, okay, or we've moved this big drive wheel posterior, okay, of the client. So again, it doesn't really matter. Either way you say it, it's the same thing. I can move my client forward to get the same result as moving the drive wheel backward, okay? So now that the client's weight is all on top of the casters, what do you think is going to happen? Now the chair is not going to be as maneuverable, right? Because it's too much weight on the casters. The client's not going to be able to zip around. The client's not going to be able to pop a wheelie as easily, okay? So the chair is not as maneuverable, but the advantage is that now the chair is very, very stable, okay? So when do we need a stable chair? Think about your clients who may present with bilateral lower extremity amputation. With bilateral lower extremity amputation, we need our client to be very stable in their chair. We need the client's center of gravity to be anterior or closer to the casters, because if we put all of their weight in the back and they don't have lower extremity or calves to offset the weight, then that chair is just going to tip backwards. So again, it's not about if one is better than the other. It's more so about what are you trying to achieve in the question. Am I trying to achieve maneuverability? If I am trying to achieve maneuverability, get your client's center of gravity away from those casters. Get the center of gravity behind the drive wheel. If I'm trying to achieve stability, get your client's weight on top of the casters, get your client's center of gravity anterior of the drive wheel. Hope that makes sense. So the last question is the difference between front wheel drive, mid wheel drive, and rear wheel drive. Okay, this is a good question. So front wheel drive means that the drive or the power is in the front of the chair. This is really good for your clients who have various terrain, or they need to navigate various terrain, because the power, the front of that wheelchair, is going to pull them over various terrain, okay? But the back end of the chair can fishtail, okay, can swing, because all of the power is in the front, especially if they're going very fast. So maneuverability is, or control of the wheelchair is not the best. The next one is rear wheel drive. So your rear wheel drive, all of the drive or the power is in the rear or the back of the chair. So the good thing about that is your clients do have a lot more control, especially if using like switches. They have a more straight path when using a rear wheel drive, and it's also good for various terrain as well. Then we have mid-wheel drive, and mid-wheel drive, one thing to remember, mid-maneuverable. Your mid-wheel drive presents with the greatest maneuverability because it presents with a very small turn radius. So the client is able to make a 360-degree turn in a very small space. So it says, the literature says 19 inches. A mid-wheel drive is able to turn around versus 33 inches is needed for like a rear wheel drive. So your mid-wheel drive has really good maneuverability. Think about your clients who may live at home. Okay, they have smaller spaces. Mid-wheel drive is going to be really, really good. The only thing is, with your mid-wheel drive, is they have casters in the front, the drive wheel in the middle, and casters in the back. So sometimes when they're making turns, the user can catch the back wheels on objects. So when you're considering a client who may present with poor spatial awareness, mid-wheel drive may not be the best, because if they can't determine how far they are from different walls, for instance, or furniture, they may constantly catch the back of the wheelchair on different objects. So again, simple concepts that may seem complex, right? But if you talk about it and really try to get that bigger picture, then it makes our life a lot easier when sitting for the exam. Thank you for joining, and I will talk to you soon.